Before I start, tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment, and if you've ever trusted someone with your whole life, this story might break you. My husband didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He didn't even look angry. He just adjusted his glasses, looked me dead in the eyes after 40 years of marriage, and said, "Clara, the kids aren't yours." I laughed. I actually laughed, because what kind of sick joke is that? I carried them. I gave birth to them. I almost died bringing our daughter into this world. "What are you talking about?" I said. His face didn't move. "They're not biologically yours." And that's when my hands started shaking. Let me take you back. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 66 years old. I've been married to Richard Whitmore since I was 23. 40 years, 40 Christmas mornings, 40 anniversaries, 2 children, 1 lifetime. Or at least, that's what I thought. We struggled to have kids at first. 3 miscarriages in 5 years. I blamed myself. Richard held my hand in hospital rooms and told me it wasn't my fault. Then one day, he came home with hope in his eyes. "There's a specialist," he said. "Experimental procedure. It could work." I didn't question him. Why would I? He was my husband. 9 months later, I was holding our son, Matthew. 3 years after that, our daughter, Sophie. I remember every kick, every contraction, every sleepless night. So when Richard said, "They're not yours," something inside my brain refused to process it. "You were sedated," he said quietly. "What?" "During the procedures, you don't remember everything." I felt cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, biologically, they aren't connected to you. You know that feeling when the floor feels unstable? That was my entire body. I carried them. Yes. I breastfed them. Yes. I raised them. Yes. Then what the hell are you talking about?" He took a deep breath, like he had rehearsed this. "The embryos weren't yours." Silence. Complete silence. I couldn't even hear the clock ticking anymore. I remember the fertility clinic. White walls, soft voices, paper gowns. I remember signing forms, but I also remember being heavily medicated after the 3rd miscarriage. I trusted him to handle paperwork. I trusted him with everything. "You're lying," I whispered. "I'm not." "Why would you do that?" His jaw tightened. "Because you couldn't give me children." That sentence hit harder than anything. 40 years. 40 years I believed we struggled together. And now he was rewriting history. I went upstairs that night and opened the old cedar chest where I kept baby clothes. Tiny socks, hospital bracelets, birth certificates. I stared at my name on those documents. Mother, Clara Whitmore. Mother. So how could he say they weren't mine? Unless something happened at that clinic, something I didn't know. The next morning, I called the fertility clinic. It had closed years ago. Records archived, ownership changed twice. Convenient. Too convenient. When I confronted Richard again, his patience cracked slightly. "You don't need to dig into the past," he said. "Why not?" "Because it won't change anything." That wasn't an answer. That was a warning. Then he said something that chilled me. "There's more." My heart stopped. "What more?" He looked at me like a stranger. "I'm not sure they're biologically mine either." Everything went silent again. "What?" "They used donor material." "You said you handled everything." "I did." "Then how do you not know?" He didn't respond immediately. And that hesitation told me everything. He knew more than he was saying. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, replaying 40 years. Every doctor visit, every time he insisted on coming alone to appointments, every form he said he'd take care of. Had I been manipulated, drugged more than necessary, switched, or was this some twisted power move? The worst part? Our children adore him. Matthew calls him every Sunday. Sophie still asks her father for advice before big decisions. If this truth explodes, it won't just destroy me. It will destroy all of us. But here's what Richard didn't know. While he was sleeping peacefully beside me, I found something in his old office drawer. A folder, fertility records, and a name I didn't recognize. Under egg donor, it wasn't mine. And that's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was control. And if the eggs weren't mine, then whose were they? And why did my husband want me to believe I was infertile? I didn't confront him about the folder. Not yet. 40 years of marriage teaches you one thing. Never show your hand too early. The name on that donor sheet kept replaying in my mind. Elena Vasquez. Age at donation, 22. Year, 1986. That was the year Matthew was conceived. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. Because I was 26 in 1986. So why was there another 22-year-old woman listed as egg donor? Unless I was never the biological mother. The next morning, I acted normal. Made coffee, kissed Richard on the cheek, asked about his golf schedule. He studied me for a second, like he was trying to read if I knew. "I have a meeting later," he said. "What kind of meeting?" I asked casually. "Legal." Legal? We're retired. What legal meeting? But I smiled. "Have a good day." As soon as he left, I called Matthew. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully. That word again. Mom. "Sweetheart, I need a favor." "What's wrong?" "Nothing serious. I want to do one of those ancestry DNA kits for health records, family history." He laughed. "You scared me for a second." "Sure, why not?" "And Sophie, too." "Mom, is everything okay between you and Dad?" My throat tightened. "Yes," I lied. 3 weeks later, the results came in. I locked myself in the bedroom before opening them. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. First result, Matthew Whitmore, 0% maternal DNA match. I stared at the screen, refreshed it, checked again. 0. My son, the baby I carried for 9 months. 0. I couldn't breathe. I opened Sophie's. 0% match. The room spun. 40 years. 2 pregnancies. Stretch marks. Labor pain. And biologically, nothing. I collapsed onto the floor. Not because they weren't mine in my heart, but because my body had been used. My trust had been hijacked. Someone made a decision about my own womb without my knowledge. And my husband knew. He knew. That night at dinner, I watched Richard carefully. He cut his steak slowly. Calm. Composed. "How was your meeting?" "Productive." "With who?" "Estate planning attorney." "Estate planning? Why suddenly?" "Just preparing." "Preparing for what?" Then he looked at me, long and hard. "You've been quiet lately." "Have I?" "Yes." That wasn't concern. That was surveillance. 3 days later, Sophie showed up unannounced. She walked into the kitchen, tension written all over her face. "Mom, what's going on?" "What do you mean?" "Dad asked me weird questions." My heart dropped. "What kind of questions?" "He said something about family medical records." Cold. Ice cold. "He what?" "He said something about..." I stared at Elena's email for a full 10 minutes before opening it, because once you open the truth, you can't close it again. I clicked. Her message was simple. "Clara, I don't know what your husband told you, but the clinic didn't follow standard protocol. I was contacted in 1992 about a file discrepancy. They asked me to sign a confidentiality agreement. I refused. I kept copies." My heart started pounding. I opened the attachment. At the top of the document, in faded letterhead, it read, "Internal Incident Report, 1989." And beneath that, subject, embryo batch mislabeling. My breathing stopped. Mislabeling? I kept reading. "Due to laboratory cataloging error, multiple embryo samples were improperly assigned. Biological origins may not correspond with listed recipient records." Recipient. That was me, which meant the embryos I carried might not have been mine, not biologically, not genetically, not even accidentally. My phone rang. Elena. I answered immediately. "Clara?" she said gently. "Yes?" "I'm so sorry you're finding out like this. You knew something was wrong?" "I suspected. When the clinic contacted me in '92, they sounded nervous. They asked if any recipient families had reached out to me." "And had they?" "No." My throat tightened. "Did they tell me who the biological father was?" Silence. "That's the strange part," she said carefully. "They told me the sperm donor was anonymous." Anonymous? So not Richard. Not necessarily. "Wait," I said slowly. "My husband told me he wasn't sure he was the biological father either." "That doesn't surprise me. Why would you say that?" A pause. "Clara, are you sure your husband didn't know more than he's admitting?" That question stayed with me long after we hung up, because something didn't fit. If this was a lab error, why did Richard insist on handling all the paperwork alone? Why did he choose that specific clinic? Why did he tell me I was infertile when no doctor ever directly said that? The next morning, I went down to the basement and pulled out my old medical files. Dust covered the box. 40 years untouched. I flipped through hormone panels from 1985. Ovarian reserve? Normal. Egg production? Normal. No genetic abnormalities noted. Normal. So where did defective come from? Only one place. Richard. The doctors never said it. He did. The incident report listed a former lab technician, Dr. Henry Caldwell. I searched his name. Retired. Living 40 miles away. And in that moment, I decided. I was going to the source. I didn't tell Richard, but he sensed something shifting. At dinner that night, he looked at me carefully. "We can still fix this," he said. "Fix what?" "Stop communicating with that donor." My fork froze mid-air. "How do you know I'm communicating with her?" He held my gaze. He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. He had access to my emails. 40 years of marriage, and now, surveillance. The next day, I stood outside Dr. Caldwell's brick house. I knocked. A frail man in his 70s opened the door. "Yes?" "I'm Clara Whittemore." His face drained of color. "I think we need to talk about 1989. We sat in his living room. His hands trembled as he poured water. Are you here about the mislabeling incident? Yes. He closed his eyes. That clinic should have been shut down. Was it just mislabeling? A long pause. No. My pulse quickened. What do you mean, no? He looked at me with visible guilt. Your husband requested a specific donor profile. The words didn't process at first. Requested? Yes. For what reason? He claimed you had genetic instability. My ears rang. What? He said your family history showed degenerative disorders. That's a lie. I know that now, he whispered, but back then we relied heavily on spouse-provided information. My voice shook. So he replaced my eggs intentionally? Yes. The room felt like it tilted. Was the sperm his? Another hesitation. I don't believe so. Why not? He also requested donor sperm. Everything inside me went silent. He what? He said he wanted specific traits, high intelligence markers, strong physical health indicators. My chest felt hollow. You're telling me my husband designed our children? In a way, yes. 40 years, and I was just the incubator. When I got home, Richard was sitting calmly on the couch. You went somewhere today. Yes. Where? To find the truth. And I found out you lied about everything. For the first time, he didn't deny it. Instead, he said something chilling. I built the perfect family. Perfect. Like we were a project. You manipulated my body. I secured our future. You stole my choice. You were too emotional to understand the bigger picture. That sentence snapped something inside me. This wasn't about emotion, I said quietly. It was about control. It was about legacy. Not love, not partnership. Control. Then he delivered another blow. If you go public with this, the estate disappears. What estate? The investments, the trusts, the properties. Everything is legally structured under my authority. 40 years, and I never questioned the finances. You wouldn't. Try me. But what he didn't know was this. Before I left Dr. Caldwell's house, he handed me a copy of the original donor request form, signed by Richard. At the bottom, handwritten, recipient unaware of modification, do not disclose. That sentence alone, that's medical fraud, reproductive coercion, possibly criminal. That night, I called an attorney. After listening carefully, she said 3 words that made my blood run cold. This is prosecutable. But before I could take the next step, Matthew called. His voice was unsteady. Mom, Dad came to see me today. My heart dropped. What did he say? He told me not to believe anything you're saying. Silence. Then Matthew added quietly, he said you're unstable. And that's when I understood. This wasn't about the past anymore. Richard wasn't defending himself. He was preparing for war. Matthew showed up first. No warning, no, hey mom, you home? He just walked in like he used to when he was 16. Only now he looked like a man who'd just found out his entire identity might be a lie. Is it true? He asked. No hug, no smile. Just that question. Behind him, Sophie walked in slower, eyes red. She'd been crying. I stood there in my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Yes, I said. It's true. Matthew ran his hand through his hair. Dad said you're spiraling, that you're digging up stuff that doesn't matter. It matters, I said quietly. It's my body, my choice, my life. Sophie's voice cracked. Mom, did you know? No. Silence filled the room. Matthew looked angry. Not at me, not fully at Dad either, just angry at the universe. So what are we? He said. Designer babies? I swallowed. You're my children. That's not what I asked. That's when the front door opened. Richard. He walked in, calm as ever, like he'd rehearsed this scene in his head. Glad we're all together, he said. Nobody responded. He looked at the kids first. Your mother's confused. I snapped, do not call me confused. He ignored me. Your mom's been talking to strangers online, people who want money. They're manipulating her. Matthew turned slowly toward him. Did you request donor eggs? Richard paused. That tiny pause. Yes, he said finally. Sophie gasped. But only because your mother couldn't. Stop, I said. But he kept going. Because she couldn't produce viable eggs. That's not what my medical records say. The room went still. Richard's eyes flicked toward me. You went through my files? No, I went through mine. Then Matthew did something I didn't expect. He pulled out his phone. I talked to Dr. Caldwell, too. Richard's face changed. Not fear, calculation. He confirmed you asked for specific genetic traits. Sophie looked like she might throw up. Is that true? She whispered. Richard exhaled slowly. I wanted the best possible future for you. Matthew laughed, but it wasn't funny. You ordered us like we were off a menu. It was about opportunity. It was about control, I said. Richard's jaw tightened. Everything I did was for this family. You mean for your legacy, I shot back. That word hit. He didn't deny it. Then Matthew dropped something none of us were ready for. I had a lawyer look into the trust structure. Richard's head snapped toward him. You what? Turns out the estate doesn't fully transfer if there's proven fraud connected to medical documentation. Silence, thick, heavy. Matthew continued. If Mom files a criminal complaint and it's proven, the trust can be frozen. Sophie looked between us like she was watching a courtroom drama unfold in real life. Richard stood up slowly. You think you understand how complex this is. Matthew didn't back down. I understand enough. Richard turned to me. If you do this, you destroy everything. You already did. No, I protected you. By lying to me for 40 years, you didn't protect me, you erased me. Then Sophie spoke up. Her voice was shaking. Dad, why donor sperm too? That question landed like a bomb, because that was the part none of us had really unpacked. Richard hesitated. I wanted optimal compatibility. That's not an answer, she whispered. He didn't elaborate, and that silence said more than anything. Matthew's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed. What? I asked. He looked up slowly. There's another DNA match. Who? Sophie asked. Matthew swallowed. A 34-year-old man in Nevada. My heart dropped. That's impossible. Matthew's voice was tight. He shares 50% DNA with me. Silence. Sophie's face went pale. You mean? Yes, Matthew said. He's likely a full biological sibling. The air left the room. Richard didn't move, didn't blink, didn't deny it. Dad? Sophie whispered. Nothing. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just donor sperm. This wasn't just trait selection. It was repeat use. Same sperm donor, multiple families, or worse, multiple embryos from the same batch implanted elsewhere, which means my children may have biological siblings scattered across the country. And Richard knew that risk. He accepted it, because to him, they weren't children. They were outcomes. Matthew looked at his father like he'd never seen him before. How many? He asked. Richard stayed silent.
How many families used the same donor? Matthew pushed. Finally, Richard spoke. That wasn't my concern. Sophie started crying. I felt something inside me go from heartbreak to fury. You played God, I said quietly. No, he replied coldly. I improved probability. That night, the kids didn't leave. They stayed. Not for him, for me. And when Richard went upstairs, Matthew turned to me and said, "If you want to file charges, I'm with you." Sophie nodded through tears. "I just want the truth." I looked at my children. Not biologically mine, but mine in every way that actually matters. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel weak. I felt clear. The next morning, my attorney called. "We've started drafting the complaint," she said, "for fraud, reproductive coercion, and medical conspiracy." I closed my eyes. Do it. Then she added something that made this even bigger. "Clara, if this becomes public, other families may come forward. Other families, other women, who might have been lied to, drugged, overruled, replaced." When I hung up, I walked into the living room. Richard was standing by the window. "You're really doing this," he said. "Yes." He turned toward me slowly. "You don't have an idea what this will expose." I met his stare. Then maybe it's time. Because if there was one thing I finally understood, Richard wasn't scared of losing money. He wasn't scared of losing reputation. He was scared of one thing: control slipping out of his hands.
It hit the news faster than I expected. Retired investor accused of reproductive fraud. That headline was everywhere. Local first, then national. By the third day, reporters were parked outside our house. Cameras, vans, microphones. 40 years of quiet suburban life? Gone overnight. The first woman contacted us 2 days after the story broke. Her name was Denise. She was 62, married in 1988, used the same fertility clinic, same year, same embryo mislabeling incident. Her voice was shaking on the phone. "My husband insisted on donor eggs too," she said. "He told me I was genetically unstable." My stomach dropped. "How many miscarriages did you have before that?" I asked. 3. Same as me. Same pattern. Same script. Then another family reached out. And another. By the end of the week, there were 7 confirmed cases. 7 women, all told they were defective, all pushed toward donor embryos, all husbands heavily involved in paperwork. And in 4 of those cases, same sperm donor ID number, meaning Matthew's Nevada match was real. When the Nevada brother finally called, Matthew put him on speaker. His name was Caleb. He sounded stunned. "My parents are freaking out," Caleb said. "They had no idea." Sophie asked softly, "How many siblings do you have?" 2, but I guess maybe more now. Matthew just stared at the wall. This wasn't some medical fluke. This was a network, and Richard had chosen to participate, knowingly. The lawsuit expanded fast. What started as fraud became a class action, medical conspiracy, coercion, emotional damages. And when subpoenas hit old clinic archives, it got uglier. Because buried in financial records was something nobody expected: payments, private payments, from husbands, labeled as genetic optimization consultation. When my lawyer showed me that line item, I felt physically sick. He didn't just agree to donor material, he paid extra to customize it. Eye color probability, height range, cognitive aptitude scoring. It sounded like something out of a dystopian movie, except it was my life. Court day felt unreal. Richard showed up in a tailored suit like this was just another board meeting, calm, collected, controlled. But something was different. He wasn't as confident, because this time
He wasn't the only one with paperwork. When I took the stand, the courtroom was silent. "Mrs. Whittemore," the prosecutor asked, "did you ever give consent to replace your genetic material?" "No." "Were you informed donor sperm would be used?" "No." "Were you told you were genetically defective?" "Yes." "Was that diagnosis medically documented?" "No." Silence. Then the final question. "How did discovering this impact you?" I swallowed. "It didn't just take my biology," I said. "It took my autonomy, my trust, my reality." I looked at Richard, and it turned my marriage into a business transaction. Then came the moment that cracked him. The prosecutor projected the donor request form on the screen, his signature, clear as day, and that handwritten note, "Recipient unaware of modification. Do not disclose." The courtroom shifted. Even his attorney looked uncomfortable. But the final blow came from Matthew. He requested to speak. He walked to the stand slowly, confident, calm. "Do you love your father?" the defense attorney asked. Matthew paused. "I loved who I thought he was." "And now?" He looked at Richard. "I feel like a product." That hit harder than any legal argument. But here's the twist none of us saw coming. During cross-examination, Richard finally broke. Not emotionally, strategically. He leaned forward and said something that froze the room. "I wasn't trying to build perfect children." Silence. "I was trying to eliminate weakness." The prosecutor blinked. "What weakness?" Richard's jaw tightened. "My father had Huntington's disease." My heart stopped. He had never told me that. Never. "It skipped me," he continued, "but I didn't want to risk passing it on." The courtroom buzzed. Huntington's is genetic, 50% chance, degenerative, fatal. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "You could have told me," I whispered. He finally looked at me. "For you to panic? For you to leave? So you lied instead?" I protected the bloodline. There it was again. Legacy, control, bloodline. But here's what destroyed his defense. Medical records showed he had tested negative, completely negative, no Huntington's marker. He wasn't protecting anyone. He was just obsessed. Obsessed with superiority, with control, with perfection. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Fraud, reproductive coercion, financial penalties massive enough to dismantle most of the estate, criminal charges pending against former clinic executives, and Richard, house arrest pending sentencing. The media frenzy died down eventually. Reporters left, cameras disappeared, and one quiet afternoon I sat in the backyard with Matthew and Sophie, the same yard where they learned to walk. Biology or not, "They're still mine," I said softly. Matthew smiled faintly. "Yeah, Mom, we know." Sophie squeezed my hand. "DNA doesn't raise kids." "No, it doesn't. Love does. Sacrifice does. Choice does. And that's the one thing Richard tried to take from me. Choice." A month later, I filed for divorce. 40 years, ended with a signature. This time, one I actually read, carefully. And here's the part nobody talks about. The healing. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's slow. But one day, I woke up and realized something powerful. He engineered genetics, but he never engineered loyalty. He designed outcomes, but he never designed character. And the two people sitting at my kitchen table every Sunday chose me, not because of DNA, but because I was their mother. Always was, always will be.